In the previous video, I talked about the ways in which in the last 800 years, Middle Mongolian became an entire language family. Today's video is about the way in which English and other colonial languages are evolving, and we'll talk about the future a bit, so it'll get a little bit speculative. However, many of these changes are taking place before your very eyes, and indeed, ears. English and French are spoken by significantly distinct populations on every inhabited continent, as well as the scientists on Antarctica, often in an official capacity. Although there is a lot to say about the number of second language learners, I'll be focusing on native speakers. Every group can have its own dialect, and while it might be hard to imagine any of these becoming its own language anytime soon, it would be not impossible. What makes these dialects and not separate languages is, very generally speaking, that they are mutually intelligible. What keeps them as languages is the large populations and the fact that they're very well connected. Any one change that occurs in any of these dialects will be much harder to bring about. Just by necessity, it will take longer and it will take more people to get behind it. However, this is by no means an impossibility. The Mongolic language family is 800 years old or so, but languages from it started to diverge pretty quickly in its history. Using a modern example, we can look at the differences between Dutch and Afrikaans. When the Dutch moved to South Africa, it was originally only with a small trading ports or a few, and farmlands, without much official regulation. The Boers were relatively isolated and had little contact. Within even 100 years, contestably, these settlements were the place where Afrikaans was created, and though it was a mix of some Bantu and other languages' vocabulary, it is, both in grammar and in vocabulary, 90 to 95% Dutch. These languages changed over time in a natural way that would have happened due to any sort of natural language change between separate people who aren't going to be changing at the same rate or in the same ways. To compare this, we'll look at the remarkably similar Surinamese Dutch, because the Surinamese people also adopted the language, but now have a joint authority between Suriname, Belgium, and the Netherlands, in which the language is standardized. As a result, the Dutch spoken in Suriname, though notably different, is remarkably similar to that spoken thousands of miles away on a different continent. Even looking at non-Creole dialects of English, it requires looking at the societies in which these are spoken just as much as the language itself. And so while not as if there is already a Anglic or Frankic language family, there are still large enough populations that could have their grammar changing in small ways, and while these differences are not especially important now, such as the use of the present subjunctive in American English instead of British English, or the preferred status of do over have in verbal constructions involving the perfect aspect, again in American English, if these small changes amount enough, this will be a new language eventually. And indeed, much of the mutual intelligibility comes from being exposed to so many of these variations in the media. It isn't a given fact that someone will understand all of the dialects of English, even as a native English speaker. Basically, these languages that have now spread to incredibly far-reaching territories, and in many ways continue to do so, will not stay how they are forever, and it isn't a guarantee that these will change in the same ways as each other over time, and when this happens, the English, French, Dutch, etc. languages may end up becoming their own language families. Thanks for watching, and if you missed it, check out the first part of this series in the link below. Otherwise, check out the daily blog and the Patreon for even more content every single day. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.